The four who dreamed Avalon, a dance of sovereignty and surrender. In a time when the stars still whispered to the earth, when Avalon was not yet lost to the mist, and the echo of destiny wove through the fabric of time, four souls bound by fate and fire stood at the sacred crossroads, each a reflection of the other, yet each walking their own path towards a great weaving of destiny. They had walked this path before. Arthur, the king bound by duty and devotion, Guinevere, the Grail guardian, the heart that could not be contained, Lancelot, the knight whose love defied the laws of kings and men, and the Lady of the Lake, keeper of the mysteries, the one who watched from beyond the veil. The queen, whose heart beat like wild horses, who longed to love freely, not as a prize, but as a sovereign flame. The knight, whose sword knew battle, but whose soul knew devotion, who swore to honour love as both a warrior and a poet. The king, not of conquest, but of wisdom, who carried the weight of realms upon his shoulders, yet longed to lay his crown at the feet of the divine. And the lady veiled in myth and mystery, the keeper of the sacred waters, who knew that to hold power was to surrender to the flow of something greater. Four souls, four mirrors, four truths, and in between them the song of Avalon. In ages past their fates had been tangled in a web of duty and desire, of loyalty and loss. Love was bound by chains of expectation, and wounds were carved into history like runes upon bone. The sword was lifted, the Grail was lost, and Avalon faded into legend. But time is not a straight path, it is a wheel, and now the wheel had turned once more. They had returned. Guinevere was a queen, but she was not his. Not Arthur's, not Camelot's, not even God's could claim her, for her heart was her own. She was the earth beneath their feet, the whispers of the wind, the untamed fire behind the throne. Lancelot came to her as a knight, but his heart did not kneel. He saw her not as an ornament to a kingdom, but as a kingdom in itself, a living, breathing force of nature, and he would not chain her. He offered his love, not as a cage, but as a gift, and in that offering Guinevere found something rare. She could love without losing herself. For theirs was a love of sovereignty, a love that did not demand, did not conquer, and did not bind. They walked side by side, free, equal, and fierce in their devotion, yet never owned by it. Arthur had been raised to rule, but a crown is a heavy thing. He knew the weight of duty, of destiny, of a world that demanded he be strong, certain, and unyielding. But the Lady of the Lake called him to the water, to the quiet, to the unknown. She did not ask for his throne. She did not bow to his legend. She only beckoned him to let go. And so he did. With her, Arthur was not a king. He was a seeker, a soul unburdened. He lay down his sword, not in weakness, but in trust. And in that surrender he found something greater than power. He found peace. For theirs was a love of surrender, a love that did not control, did not claim, did not seek to define. It flowed like the water, ever-changing, yet eternal. And so, in the stillness of the lake, the magician king was not lost, he was found. This time Arthur did not seek to claim the Grail guardian. He had come to understand she was never his to hold. She was his mirror, his reminder of what was sacred, but not his to possess. And so he released her. Guinevere and Lancelot stood together again, but no longer in the shadows of betrayal. This time they would love freely, not as stolen moments, but as sovereign souls walking a path that no longer required secrecy or sorrow. And the Lady of the Lake remained, watching with eyes that saw beyond time, beyond form. The one who had given Arthur his sword, the one who had seen him fall, the one who waited, not to rule, not to bind, but to love. She asked him, not with words, but with the silence between them, will you claim the sword again, or will you surrender to the lake and let love be the new kingdom? The sword was never meant to be wielded in war. It was meant to cut through illusion. The grail was never meant to be owned. It was meant to be found within. The warrior never meant to fight forever. He was meant to become the king. And the king was never meant to rule alone. He was meant to love. And so, standing at the sacred crossroads, Arthur placed his hand upon Excalibur's hilt, not to wield it in conquest, not to hold dominion over lands and laws, but to cut away the illusion that love could ever be bound by duty, by title, by fate. He had fought long enough. He had carried the weight of kingship, the burden of expectation, and that moment he understood. The greatest act of sovereignty is to choose love, and the greatest act of surrender is to trust it. He turned to the Lady of the Lake. His heart was his kingdom, and to her he offered it freely, if she wished to claim it. Avalon lingered between them still, the mist swirling with ancient knowing, for the story was not yet written, the path still unfolding, but this time they walked it together. Not as ruler and subject, not as warrior and prize, but as two souls, sovereign and surrendered. And so the wheel turned once more. There are two ways to love, and both are sacred. One is the love of sovereignty, where two souls stand side by side, whole unto themselves, their love a fire that burns, yet never consumes. The other is the love of surrender, where two souls become the river and the current, the dream and the dreamer, a love that dissolves all boundaries and becomes something vast and infinite. Neither is greater than the other, neither is lesser, and each is a path, and each is a truth. So tell me, traveller, do you burn as fire? Do you flow as water? Or do you stand as Avalon between the two, dreaming them both into being?